special guest. I just had him come into the room. Everybody, please welcome Tom Thummery.
On this episode of Omegle.
Know that I'm here, and your white privileges are going to save you tonight, okay, guys?
Smooths itself out.
Tell you what I'll do if I ever get back. I promise to refabricate you, raging rivers of gold. That's what the brochure advertised.
That's right. It's time for the Dog and Chicken Show. And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is episode 93. Welcome to the Dog and Chicken Show. I am Chicken, of course, and off to my side, as always, the man, the myth, the legend, Tony fucking G. How you doing tonight, brother?
Wonderful. Absolutely wonderful.
I think that's 2 weeks in a row that you were just stupendous. But as always,
I'm consistent.
You are. If nothing, you are consistent. And if nothing else, being consistent, we also have Phil holding us up.
Yes, thank you for having me this evening here at the Dog and Chicken Show. I am the devilishly handsome outlaw himself, your king of extreme, Phil KOE. You can find me at KOE Nation on YouTube and Twitch. And of course, here at Big Buckin' Empire, where we are going to get into all kinds of interesting topics this evening. We're going to be covering the presidential elections throughout history, and we are going to show you how. But Tony, I'm going to tell you, don't worry, sir. Everything is wonderful now. Don't worry. Don't worry. It's all going to be better. It's all going to be better. We're going to get there, and we're going to get there together. So, Chicken, without further ado, good sir, what is the topic du jour this evening?
So this is actually something I wanted to do back in lockdown days. I wanted to go through every single president and kind of like break down what were politics like back then. You know, would you actually have voted for them? Are they as great as we make them out to be? And then I had to go back to work, and my lockdown kind of ended. So the other day, actually, we were discussing, hey, what should we talk about? And Phil brought the idea up, and with a little bit of a twist to it. And I was like, fuck yeah, we just need to start doing these because this will be a lot of fun. So that's pretty much what we're going to do. But we're going to do it with the Thirsty Thursday twist. And of course, we have drinking words tonight. See them scrolling across the bottom of your screen. But let's see, what are they? We got Federalist, War, British, French, or we can say Britain and France, I guess. And then, of course, as always, if Tony's kids interrupt the show, and Tony, I think Phil's right. Everything is fine now. We hit the record button. Yes, folks, this isn't live. Sorry. This is pre-recorded, but it still is Thirsty Thursday in all of our hearts.
Business.
I know. Well, they're going to wonder why their comments don't pop up, and they're going to think we all hate them, which we do. We do. But
that's fair.
That's
fair. You know, if we're going to be totally,
but it's all better, Tony. We hit the record button. It's drinking.
But so
time.
for this
I was going to say, Tony, what are you drinking?
Yeah, I was going to say for this presidential drinking evening, what are we drinking, gents?
I'm starting off with a dram of Weller's Special Reserve.
Ooh,
nice.
Kentucky straight bourbon whiskey.
Beautiful.
So, Tony will be representing the South.
Prepping for a weekend, wink, wink, foreshadowing of some future content to come. I'm prepping myself back up on some rye. I got my Bullet Rye, which was, guess what, one of my favorites. And you have to go back and watch that video to see who won when it came to the rye challenge. But I'll jump over. My wife got me Jefferson's, and it's it's a gimmick age statement where they like take it out on a boat and age it in the Caribbean. But it was actually really good. So I'm going to switch over just for presidents in election time. I'll have some Jeffersons, even though I don't really think it has shit to do with Thomas Jefferson. I think they just kind of ripped off the name, but it's still pretty good bourbon, and yeah, I like it. So piss off.
Well, thank you. We will. I'm sure everybody in the audience, like, well, yes, chicken. I'll get right to pissing off. But
yes,
what I'm drinking this evening, because we are going to be talking about an actual denizen of this particular area, I'm drinking actually Trump wine from Monticello, which was the home of Thomas Jefferson. So I figured, what would be better? Now, chicken. Funny enough, when you talk about that, Thomas Jefferson was very anti-whiskey. He even said that the bane of whiskey drunkenness is not found anywhere where wine is cheap, and wine is the antidote of the public bane that is whiskey. So he was really heavy into, he wanted to cultivate a wine drinking culture here in America, like there was in, well, we're going to have to drink like in France.
Didn't he get rid of the whiskey tax though?
I think he did. Yeah. Like, don't get me wrong. He didn't want to stifle industry, because in those days there was no storage bin that had like air you could move across it. If you wanted to store your grain, you had to distill it and turn it into a whiskey. So I could see that. So
fair enough. So folks, we're about to go back in time, and we're going to pretend like we lived in this time. So wavy lines across the screen. I don't know if I'll do any actual effects on here. Yeah, this is good enough. We're going to go back to the year 1788. So the first actual presidential election occurred on Monday, December 15th, 1788. And it lasted until Saturday, January 10th, 1789. Why so long, you might ask? Well, because it's fucking 1788, and you had 13 states to like go on horseback to go let everybody know that, hey, we're going to vote for somebody. You guys, who do you want? So this was not an easy task to collect all that information from all the states and to actually declare a president. So we needed time, took almost a month, and odd date. This is the only election that actually went into 2 separate years. Granted, it's the end of 88 and the beginning of 89. But if I could be incorrect. I don't think I am. This is the only time an election actually went across New Year's Day. So,
yeah, I believe you're correct.
Well, again, this is the first one, so it was going to take a minute to work all the bugs out. Yes. So we've got obviously George Washington, but then also whoever won second place became vice president. So
yeah, that was a super weird thing at the time.
Yeah, going back and looking at this and seeing just how the actual election process worked, it's a little jarring to consider.
Could you imagine?
We still did that today. Can you imagine how that would just pan out? It would just be.
Could you imagine chaos. Biden being president and Trump being VP? Oh God, it would be so bad.
Yeah, I mean, like think about George W. Bush being president and Al Gore being vice president. So that's like. Don't get me wrong. I understand the logic. I mean, the guy who got the second most votes probably should at least step in for but at the same time, the system we have now where there is a streamlined continuance and transfer of power, I think is much more preferable in our modern day. But I can understand this. Now, I think all right, now keep in mind, you, me, chicken, all of us, regardless of where we're living at, there's a very good Vegas odds chance that every one of us served in the revolution underneath General Washington. If we are alive in this era to vote in this election, so the idea that like obviously George Washington is going to get first place, and then it's a matter of who would be your second place pick. And to me personally, like now I'm assuming like, I'm a farmer now. So like, all right, assume I'm like some farmer in Connecticut or whatever. Like it would be a pretty tough competition between John Adams and John Hancock. George Clinton, he keeps showing up in American history. Like
Yes, he does.
he is. And Tony, he's a guy you would love, because there was one point when he was on the VP ticket. He said, "No, I don't want to do this. I'm not leaving my house. Stop it. Why are you making it?" So he was literally a guy who was on the ticket who really didn't want to be. So that was like, I kind of love the guy. Just George Clinton, like, just didn't.
Yeah, he's an interesting character for sure.
So out of all of the candidates here, those of you watching and not just listening, he is the only non-federalist candidate, and you'll see that because it says anti-federalist candidates. Governor of New York, George Clinton.
We have to drink.
So this is what we
got to
had
drink
work
like two
with.
times on that.
Yeah, this is what we had to work with in the first election, folks. We had a bunch of people running under one, let's call it a constituency, and then one that just, well, we don't like that. So
it wasn't parties. So the difference between the two were ones that agreed with ratifying the Constitution and those who opposed ratifying the Constitution. The ones that opposed ratifying it thought it gave the federal government way too much power, and those that approved of it, and not all that approved of it, were happy about how much powers the federal government had, but they thought it necessary to kick off the country, and more or less were okay with what was in there. But I think there were actually two other candidates for the anti side. They don't have their pictures on there because I don't think there's any known pictures of them. But neither of them were very popular. But George Clinton was definitely the most popular, and he'll be around for a while in this story. He pops up from time to time.
Like, I almost wonder, do you suppose Bill Clinton is descended from George Clinton?
Yes.
So, like, he was just raised with, like, I will avenge the fact that we never made it to the White House. Like, you don't suppose.
I don't care if that's true. I want it to be.
Yes,
I know, right?
Yes. Like that. You're absolutely right, Tony. It's like, yeah, please let that be true.
So the list of candidates, of course, George Washington did not actually deal in politics. He was more on the Federalist side, but his home state being Virginia, and there was weird rules. You could only vote for one person if it came out of your state. So if there was two people from your state running, you couldn't like vote for one as president and the other for VP because they're both from your state. They wouldn't allow that to happen. That was kind of an interesting little rule back then.
You got to remember the limit of states at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And they wanted to keep the power spread around. They didn't want it.
They
didn't want to favor the North or the South too much.
Yep. Then we had John Adams, very well known from Massachusetts. He was pro. I'm going to try to avoid using the Fed word here, but he was pro-constitutional, being whatever. Most of these guys are. I'll just call them Feds. I'm just going to call them Feds.
I like watching you dance around. Use the word.
Yeah, I was going to say the F word, but I'm like, well, no, everybody's going to think something else. Like, damn it. So anyway, you got John Adams from Massachusetts. You got John Jay from New York. Robert Harrison from Maryland. John Rutledge from South Carolina. You got John Hancock, very famous, and technically before the Constitution, technically ran or was our president technically in the old Federalist days or whatever. Damn, I said it again.
Well, no, under the Articles of Confederation, and then he was also by the Royal Crown was appointed. Yep. I don't know what the
even
term
before
was, but
the Articles of Confederation. Yes, there was like two groups.
Yeah, so John Hancock is one of those folks who you don't like. They don't tell the full story, and that's why his signature being so big was such a big deal, because he had been actually appointed by the Crown at some point. So, but yeah, anyway, George Clinton, which we already talked about, he was from New York. Sam Huntington from Connecticut. John Milton from Georgia. James Armstrong, also from Georgia. Benjamin Lincoln
Massachusetts. So we got 2 from Massachusetts, 2 from Georgia, 2 from New York. So that's kind of hindering them a little bit. And then a third one in Georgia was an also anti-guy, Edward Telfair. He was the governor in Georgia, I believe, during this time. But yeah, that didn't go very far for him. So yeah, like looking back through these early days, I don't know if we want to go through each candidate's like, history and everything, but like some of the front runners were John Adams, John Hancock, and on the anti side, George Clinton. Of course, everybody knew George Washington was kind of a shoo-in, except for Alexander Hamilton. This was a little side note. Alexander Hamilton actually was afraid that they would get John Adams would end up with the same amount of electoral votes, and it would be a tie and go to the House of Representatives for a pick, and he didn't want that. So he was actually trying to sway electoral votes away from John Adams to secure George Washington's victory. Since Alexander Hamilton did not run, he was our very first election. May have had some little meddling going on there.
Not from Hamilton. No. You're not, just the scheming conniver in all the back rooms of Washington, D.C. No, not Hamilton. Now, again, when you're talking about all this, like I'm just thinking back to the musical Hamilton, and when there's literally a scene where you've got Madison, Jefferson, and Burr all standing around, and they're singing, "Must be nice, it must be nice to have Washington on your side." And they're just saying like, wow, Hamilton, must be so nice having Washington on your side for everything. So when I'm hearing you bring him up, like Hamilton was a very interesting founding father, and he was the first Secretary of Treasury as well. And he still adorns the $10 bill. But yeah, so we've got this pretty, like everybody pretty much said it was a lockup for George Washington, and it really was. I think Hamilton's fears were a little overblown. But again, that does point to how good of an administrator John Adams is. The fact that like this little bureaucrat could actually take out General Washington in the first election, that does point to he was a very competent administrator.
Yep, for sure.
Now, I think it's pretty easy to say, like, if we were alive in this era, it's pretty fair to say we probably served, like I said, in that revolution. So the idea that we're not going to vote for General Washington is pretty absurd. But then it's an idea of who's your second place. And I think it would be for me, it would be, like I said, you're stuck between John Adams and John Hancock. John Hancock did actually have a very, very real hand in the revolution, and without him, we don't have a revolution. But same could be said for John Adams. And so I don't know, like I got a feeling it'd be like, well, which one served in battle more? And so that would probably be what would have swayed probably my vote. So I would say probably by a hair, I'd probably give it to John Hancock as a runner-up.
Interesting. John K. He'd be your VP. I had gone through here, and just my line of work in general. I don't like big government and government interference on anything. Like most businesses are more effective on their own, and appreciate the Constitution and all that. But I might have been on the anti-federalist side, of a lot of things back in the day. If I inserted myself into 1788 in a similar line of work, I'd probably Phil, I think you said probably in like a New York or I'd probably be in Philadelphia or something like that.
Somewhere close to a port.
Yeah,
because you're a logistics guy, so you'd probably be either in like cart shipping or boat shipping in some kind. So like I'm just trying to find like professions that are analogous to what we like. And so that was my thought, is you'd probably be in some sort of shipping and ports. And so, yeah, pretty much anywhere where you're close to the ocean was where I would peg Chicken.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with that. That's why I think I would probably end up. I read up a little bit. I probably would have leaned more towards George Clinton. He was not a. He was. It's like he was a. I don't necessarily call him a war hero, but you know he was in the Revolutionary War. I mean, he served his time and did his duties and whatnot. But yeah, I probably would have been more on the states' rights side of things and let states do their thing without the federal government being involved. Out of all of these, it'd been him or probably John Adams. But I'm not thinking ahead of what John Adams did later. But like what you know of John Adams up until this point, I probably would have had him as next one up. But I probably would have went with George Clinton.
Besides George Washington, who had the most military experience?
Well, as far as like hardcore battle, I don't know if any of these guys were generals, were they, or like officers? Like, a lot of them were politicians or just wealthy elites or former. Yeah, just let's see. Let me see here. Let's see. Robert Hanson Harrison. He was an American Army officer, attorney, and a judge. Continental Army veteran, American Revolution. Most noted, he served under George Washington. He was his military secretary.
That'd be tough.
Yeah.
Which one's that?
That's Robert Harrison.
Okay, there you go. That would have been my second choice after Washington.
Gotcha.
There you go.
Yeah.
It's
I mean,
simple.
he's got a very good point there because, like I said, I mean, Tony would have been a soldier in the Revolution who served under Washington.
I mean, you got to think about it. It's the first presidential election of a newly founded country that you're a part of, and you're still thinking Revolutionary War, of course. Drink.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to keep that in the back of your mind.
Well, you might have thought of somebody.
Like
John Milton was his family was from North Carolina, but he ran from Georgia. But yeah, he was a Revolutionary War officer and well decorated in a well respected, prominent figure in those times as well. Sounds like he was kind of like that day's like Pat Tillman. Like everybody was like, "Fuck yeah, rah rah." Well, of course he didn't die, but.
So basically, at that point, it breaks down to which one was closest to whatever particular like unit or battalion Tony was serving with. It's like, it would like, well, he was in my, however they were breaking rank down back then. We were closer in rank, so I like him. So,
and Benjamin Lincoln, actually, he was another Army officer, and candidate in this one. He was involved in 3 major surrenders during the, participation in battles of Saratoga. Hold on, I'm going to pull this all up here. His participation in the battles of Saratoga, sustaining a wound shortly afterward, contributed to the surrender of the British Army. He oversaw the largest American surrender of the War of 1780 siege on Charleston, and as George Washington's second in command, he formally accepted the British surrender at Yorktown as well. So this guy, Benjamin Lincoln, would have been pretty fucking popular too.
Yeah, I think he pops up again here in another couple elections.
Possibly. I can't remember.
Oh, the suspense. So
he ended up becoming the first United States Secretary of War, though. So he was.
He was apparently no.
Washington was pretty
impressed.
Loyal to him.
So I think we've basically broke down. Chicken would be going anti-federalist all the way. Tony would be going with whoever had the most military distinguishment and who was ever basically closest to his unit. And me, I would be like, to me, like it's very close between John Adams and, like I said, John Hancock. And John Hancock, if he was one of the guys that kind of sparked the whole revolution, so that would be fresh in my mind. And so it would be close, but yeah, I'm going to go with John Hancock on this one.
Gotcha.
VP.
And so results. I think I have them pulled up here. Oh shit!
Big shocker. So who won the presidency?
George
who was it?
Washington.
Whoa!
No.
Yeah.
So my $1 bill is right. Okay.
Yeah, son of a
Yeah.
bitch. And then second place, which Alexander Hamilton may have been correct to think that there might have been a little bit of a challenge. So George Washington got 69 electoral votes, which is the most you can get at the time. So he is the only president ever to get unanimous electoral college votes. And then next in line, John Adams got 34. And then John Jay got 9, and everybody else was like 6 or less. And it kind of like fades out throughout there. My George Clinton only got 3.
How many did
Oh.
Hancock get?
John Hancock got 4.
Hey, I got one more than you. Oh! So the Anti-Federalists drink did not have a good go of it. Now, granted, they had Washington on the side of the Federalist drink.
Stop it.
This is fun. So we move onward and upward. So George Washington wins election handily. John Adams very quickly discovers that the vice presidency is not there to advise the president.
No.
He gets kicked out of cabinet meetings fairly quickly. And he suddenly finds out that being the VP is not all it's cracked up to be.
No. not a lot of people like being VP after that. So we're moving on to 1792, the next presidential election. Was there any states added yet? Kentucky.
Bourbon.
And is Kentucky the only one that got added? I think
Maybe.
so. Yeah, I think Kentucky this time, and then I think we start adding states like each one of these elections. I think there's another state that gets ratified and added to these. But so Kentucky's the newest one to join the party here and help elect the president of these United States. This one happens November 2nd. Let's see, we're in 1792, November 2nd, and it lasts till December 5th. So another month, of course, we explained why. And for the most part, George Washington, again, is so damn popular. He's pretty much running unopposed. So again, we're picking a VP is really all we're doing in this one. Is the field as heavy as it was last time, Tony? I can't remember.
It sure doesn't look like it based off of the Wikipedia entry. We've got, for the Federalist drink nominations, we've got, of course, George Washington from Virginia, the current sitting president, and the current sitting vice president, John Adams from Massachusetts. From the no longer Anti party, the Democratic Republican nominations, good old Governor George Clinton of New York, and oh, look at that, President George Washington from Virginia.
Son of a biscuit. He gets to be on both tickets. Not bad.
Weird.
But no,
That's
this is the
strange.
beginning of something, and I'm going to quote the musical Hamilton again. Let's show these Federalists what we're up against. Southern motherfucking Democratic Republicans. Oh, yes. And so this is where the first political party shows up. The Southern Democratic Republicans have now made a coalition. They're also referred to as the Virginia Boys. So we have a Federalist and Anti-Federalist. This is fun. Ticket.
That's a lot of drinks right now. Jesus.
Yeah, I was going to say, Phil just rattled off like 7.
Well, you're both drinking whiskey and I'm drinking wine, so that's what makes us fun.
Piss off.
So it really breaks down to which direction do you want to see the vice president? All you're doing is sending a message to Washington, D.C. That's really, well, not Washington, D.C., New York at this point. They hadn't moved the capital yet. So this is one of those, do you stick with John Adams or do you go with George Clinton?
Right. So the electoral rules of this time required each presidential elector to cast 2 votes without distinguishing which was president and which was vice president. The recipient of the most votes would become president and the runner-up vice president. So that was the Democratic Republican Party, which had organized an opposition to the policies of Alexander Hamilton. Here he comes again. Supported Clinton for the position of VP. Adams, meanwhile, was backed by the F party in his bid for another term. Neither party had fully organized at this time. Of course, the Democratic Republican Party was brand new, and the partisan division wasn't quite solidified. So you had some of the feds and the anti-feds not quite knowing what the Democratic Republican Party really stood for yet, but they knew some of the people that were there, and they're like, hey, I kind of like that guy. Hey, that George Clinton guy's not that bad. I know he was an anti-fed, but he's in a new party now. Maybe he's not as bad as an evil as I thought he was. So you had some confusion. The partisan divide wasn't there at this time, and some people were starting to get swayed by some of this, and propaganda wasn't anything back then compared to what it is today, but it still happened at local levels. So it was really interesting. This is where you get to see kind of some of those like if you were back then, it was telephone. Hey, there's this new political party, the Democratic Republican Party. And so, there was a lot of confusion at the beginning. And as we head into this election, like I said, the partisan divide wasn't there. And this was like, hey, we got a new party. All right. What is this all about? And people starting to get interested in the politics, especially the elites. Because let's remember back then, only way you could vote, the 3 of us, we only qualified to vote back then because we all own land, assuming, and we're white males. Unfortunately, that's the only people that could vote. So, transplanting ourselves back then, we're lucky to be alive and survive the war and not die of like measles or famine or whatever, and to own property and to have a job. So, and we get to vote now. So, and we're the only ones.
Yep. More to come later. Trust me. In the preceding videos to come here, folks, more and more people get the franchise, and you'll notice that's how a lot of these eras get divided, is more people gain franchise to vote, and that actually is how mentally we kind of divide these different eras. So we're covering this era today, but I will, gentlemen, I think I'll go first in this one. To me, personally, between George Clinton and John Adams, I would have very enthusiastically voted for John Adams for a couple of reasons. A, out of a sense of loyalty to General Washington and the continuation of his administration as he has it. And also, John Adams does not own slaves. And so that is an attitude that I would want reflected in New York.
Gotcha. So in this one, most Democratic Republicans at this time, they didn't want George Clinton. They wanted Thomas Jefferson. And they couldn't get Thomas Jefferson. So this was he's playing second fiddle. George Clinton's playing second fiddle here, unfortunately. And it was mainly the ideological following of Thomas Jefferson, and the people adored and loved him. And they thought if anybody was going to unseat George Washington, like who could do it? Well, John Adams couldn't do it. So the next one would be Thomas Jefferson. But I don't think that was the end game and the goal. There's some documentation on this, but I feel personally, from what I've read, I really feel, it was, between Jefferson, James Madison, some of these future names that we're going to run into, I think everybody was fine with George Washington. He didn't even want to run. They had to everybody had to beg him to run. And honestly, a lot of the play here was, hey, we started this new Democratic Republican Party. It's fragile. And, the rift is starting to come along, and we need George Washington to stay in power. So we can start cementing ourselves and move on past him eventually. Like, but it was too fragile in the moment, and I think everybody recognized that. And I think these were just both having John Adams in there was just a safe bet, and putting George Clinton in there, that was the other safe bet. No matter who won, there was not going to be any big ripples in the water, and the country's going to move forward. Nobody's going to get pissed off. Everybody's still going to be happy for the next 4 years until we have our first next big election, because Washington didn't want it in the first place. He didn't want it for re-election. He damn sure said he wasn't doing a third one.
And he set a very long precedent.
Yep.
I was really prepared to just tell you George Washington and George Clinton, but you really just sold me on. So basically what you're saying is if I voted for John Adams and George Clinton, it would essentially tear partisan politics apart from itself before it could actually begin. Yep, I'm doing
Probably
that.
would have destroyed the country in its infancy.
No, in all honesty, it would have been. I probably would have gone George Washington and George Clinton.
Yeah, same.
All right, so we're starting to see some divides here, folks. And shockingly, of all things, I never thought I would be finding myself as a federalist. Yes, it doesn't count if you say it in Spanish.
There you go.
Yeah, sure.
So I think, but again, like it's also out of a sense of loyalty. So Chicken, what was the election results of this particular election year, sir?
So election results, once again, George Washington, 100% of the Electoral College, 132 votes. Coming in behind him, so was it going to be John Adams or George Clinton? John Adams got 77, George Clinton 50. And here's some fun ones. Thomas Jefferson, not even on the tickets, got 4 from Virginia. Nice. And Aaron Burr, which he'll come up soon, actually got 1 electoral vote. But this was the first sophisticated election we had.
Ego.
Yeah, right. This was the first sophisticated election we had. The first election, there's very little data. It's just real plain Jane. Like this state said this and whatever. And half the states didn't even fucking like actually send a electoral vote. Like Virginia, and there was another state that like half the electoral people didn't even fucking cast their vote. One of them didn't even select somebody because they didn't fill out the paperwork right. Like. It was really sloppy the first time. This one, like when you get on Wikipedia and you look at the very first election versus this one, the amount of data you get by state and actual breakdowns, really, really fascinating. But I think, Phil, correct me if I'm wrong here, this was the lowest voter turnout in American history, I believe.
You know, I don't have the statistics for that in front of me, but I do believe you're right, because
it was
just
0.88% of the population.
Sweeping mandate. So now granted, it was one of those like, well, everybody knows George Washington's going to win. Yeah. So, if you didn't go out to vote that day, it was going to be one of those like, the sun is still going to rise in the east and set in the west, and the rain will still fall from the clouds. It's one of those like I kind of get it at that point. Right. So is what it is. But like we said, more people get the franchise. You're going to get more people voting. But so shockingly. Now, I'll give George Clinton. Now he's got 53 electoral votes that he's won thus far. So I can see why he sticks around and he keeps showing up. I think we need a drink for that.
Might as well. I'm pretty sure kids are coming. More about this election. It was really interesting because the very first election, I think, was like 1.33% voter turnout, which was like 40,000 people. Now back then it was like 3 to 4 million people in the entire country. So this is 4 years later. Population hasn't changed that much. Only 28,500 people voted in this second election. So it's crazy low turnout numbers. Most states like Maryland, let's see what it have. George Washington got 898 votes in Maryland. Like, yeah.
Not a lot of people were turning out for these elections. And like I said, not a lot of people could vote either. So
Yep.
that was well, now we move onward and upward to now. This is Washington's final term. He's saying, I'm saying goodbye, and I'm going back to my what would you call it, a ranch, a plantation, going back to his farm, and he's done.
Yep.
And so now it's the election of 1796, pitting John Adams versus Thomas Jefferson of the Southern Democratic Republicans.
So this was actually pretty interesting at this time. So there's electoral college still is that's our constitution. That's how we've done this since the start. There was 138 members of the electoral college. So it meant you needed 79 votes to win. So that's where we're going to run with here to see what happens. This was pretty damn close. Like extremely close, if I remember right. Anyway, we'll go through because there were more candidates than just them. Because since we've been focused on VP tickets this whole damn time, Tony's got them pulled up there on the screen. So we got, of course, John Adams, Thomas Pink. I always suck at saying his name. Pinckney. I don't know why I can't say it. It fucking feels weird in my throat. Oliver Ellsworth, John Jay reappears, James Iredell, Sam Johnston. I was going to say Sam Jackson, and Charles Coatsworth, Pinckney as well. Are they related?
I would assume they're both from South Carolina.
God, could you imagine that? It's like, I'm running for president, Charles. Oh, really, Thomas? Well, guess what? So am I. God. Really, Thomas? Yes, Charles. Like just two brothers that are just locked in an eternal sibling rivalry.
And then for the Democratic Republican candidates, Thomas Jefferson, of course, heading the ticket. And then the next one's Aaron Burr, which he got the one on the last election. Samuel Adams from Massachusetts shows up. And then George Clinton again joining, throwing his hat in the ring. So let's see. We have new states to add here. Tennessee was admitted to, I believe, at this time. Was there any other states added? Ohio's not there yet. Looks like just Tennessee this time.
Yep. All righty. So this is an interesting one. Like now, to me, as somebody that's, like I said, a Connecticut farmer, served in the Revolution, starting to get to be a little bit of an old man now. The one thing from the Democratic Republicans that would be really appealing is they've got Samuel Adams amongst the ticket. Otherwise, these Virginia boys are starting to concern me a little bit. George Clinton from New York, that's good. But Aaron Burr, it just depends on your perspective in history, really, whether you love Burr or hate Burr.
He was a politician and a lawyer. Even though he's more of the anti-Fed guy. Yeah, just by his career. Yeah, I'm no fan of this guy. Sorry, politicians and lawyers, but you're all dishonest.
The stuff he did after
his fans of the Dog and Chicken Show.
Well, yeah. you should really sometimes, folks, do some research on some of the crazy stuff Burr did after his duel with Hamilton, because the idea that he just went away and didn't do anything in politics is not exactly true. He had some weird schemes. He tried to set up one of the territories as one of his little fiefdoms, and he never stopped scheming until the day he died. So strange character. But then when we get to the Federalists, doesn't count if I say it in Spanish. We've got John Adams, Thomas Pinckney, Oliver Ellsworthy, John Jay. We've gone through this list.
We've already gone through this.
To me, I'll be honest with you, in regards to wanting to keep George Washington's continuous administration flowing, I would probably... I would be enthusiastically voting for John Adams. And like I said, I would want again, somebody that does not own slaves to hold the White House, because that would be thinking, well, surely we're going to see some change in that area, right?
Correct.
And that would be the thinking. That'd be the thought, anyways. We'll see. Unfortunately, we've got some other elections to cover that get into that. But that would be my thought, is John Adams, because that is the continuation of George Washington's administration, and for the other reasons I listed.
Fair enough. I probably would have stuck with the Jefferson side. Yes, he did own slaves and has a dirty past with some of that. Though the philosophy and the things that he, granted, I hate the whole Jefferson slavery thing, because there's so much documentation saying he wanted to free the slaves, but yeah, he owned slaves. Like, it's just like, you can't defend it. He had it. Like, no matter what his writings were, what was in his journals, what his original Declaration of Independence was, like, that was his most profound thing, was the original version of the Declaration of Independence, and the wording on there was like just a big fuck you to King George, but it also was like very clearly laying out freeing slaves and a free society and everything that we want in today's world, beyond human rights. Like, it just talks about anti-government, being government just being there for its only purpose and staying the fuck out of your business. So it was amazing in its original form, and then a whole bunch of people had to come in and mess with it. But I'm a big Thomas Jefferson fan, but I definitely would have leaned towards him. And as far as now, this is like, you're still picking your backup in your number two, because we didn't ratify the Constitution for voting until I think 1804. So this is still first place and second place people, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. I think actually this particular election is the one that they That's why this rule gets changed. Yes. Yeah, because somebody that's on the screen right now damn near became president.
Yeah. So I would have done Thomas Jefferson for my presidential pick, and hopefully I would have been smart enough back then to not pick an alternate, an opposing party as my second pick, because that's just not smart politics. I would have had to have chosen somebody in that same party. I probably would have stuck with George Clinton. Maybe Sam Adams, but probably George Clinton.
Yeah, nobody wants to fess up to voting Burr.
Yeah.
No. Burr was kind of a piece of shit.
Yeah. No, I'm torn here, because it depends on how I enjoyed the last two election results and the administration, how they handled it after. Like, if I was a huge fan of it, like you said, Phil, John Adams for consistency's sake, just because. But if I'm not a fan of how it came out, then maybe at this point I'd be inclined to go with the Democratic Republicans, because, as I said, Thomas Jefferson was supposed to be that guy, but we kind of had to use George Clinton instead. So I could see myself going Thomas Jefferson, George Clinton. I could see myself going Thomas Jefferson and John Adams, or vice versa. There's a few ways you could go with this, but I think those are really the only names on here that really stand out to me that would be, I think, legitimate options. I think some combination of John Adams, Thomas Jefferson, and George Clinton. George Clinton's been in this thing every time, regardless of his vested interest or not. So just for the sake of consistency, I think we're probably looking at something combination-wise of John Adams and Thomas Jefferson.
This would be my first bipartisan ticket vote, where I would be going for John Adams for presidency and Samuel Adams for vice president.
Fair. Sam Adams was probably one of the better candidates on here that got overlooked at the time.
Yep, he was just as a candidate was just impressive. If you wanted to appeal to a wide section of American voters at the time, so yeah, it would have been an Adams ticket. An Adams electory. Da-na-na-na.
Awesome.
So,
All right.
what was the ultimate result, Chicken?
So remember, we needed 70. 70 was the magic number because today.
Oh, there was a kerfuffle here.
Yeah. So we ended up, one candidate got 71 electoral votes. The other one got 68. So this was massively close, or massively, like this was super, super close. John Adams pulls it off with 71, and Thomas Jefferson comes in second place with 68.
Oh.
Followed by Thomas Pinckney. I sound weird saying it. I know I do. Aaron Burr comes in fourth somehow. Anyway, Sam Adams comes in fifth. And then we, let's see, Oliver Ellsworth out of Connecticut ends up with 11. Everybody else had less than 10. George Clinton was 7. Since we mentioned him so much on here, he did not do well in this one either. But there was 3 candidates from New York, and one of them was Aaron Burr. So apparently, Aaron Burr, people liked him more than they did George Clinton, which I don't know. I guess I had to be alive back then. Don't get it.
Yeah, that's kind of the gist of this, isn't it?
Yep. Any guesses on how many people voted in this election? Because the very first one was about 40,000. The second one was 28,000. Any guesses?
Guessing probably
50.
35 to 45.
Higher?
Oh,
50.
Higher?
70.
60.
In between the two of you.
65.
65.
66,841 people voted in this election. So this is the most votes we've ever had in American history to date.
Okay.
Fantastic, huh?
And the winner was
John Adams.
yes, and so did I forget? Did Thomas Jefferson actually serve as vice president under John Adams, or I think? Yeah, I think he did actually.
Yes, he did. He did serve the full term under as VP.
And then he ran against his own. Like, I can see why they eventually wanted to change the rules. It's like, boy, can't imagine why you're not on board with the Adams agenda here.
Yeah. So John Adams' presidency, for the most part, he was fine, but Phil, he kind of tripped, and he is, gonna foreshadow a little bit. He's gonna be the first of a certain term president. I won't just totally give it away, but I kind of gave it away. But what did he pull off in his from 1796 to 1800 that caused some issues here?
Where would you like to start, Chicken? The economy was not doing well. You had yellow fever. That's what they called it at the time. Was going through Philadelphia. He had the XY affair. Is that what it was referred to?
I'd have to look again and see exactly what that was.
I guess what is it that you're referring to, Chicken?
Oh, let me scroll down here. There's like one major thing that really fucked up his whole presidency. Is it the alien sedition?
Yes, that one. Big executive overreach, and it was.
Yeah, he had the XYZ affair. You're correct. He had that too.
But yeah, so read out the controversial part of the Alien Sedition Act here, Chicken.
Oh, should we just read through the? Okay. Republican opposition persisted. Federalists accused the French and their associated immigrants, blah, blah, blah. Basically what this said was anytime you dissented, you could be held against federal law pretty much just by speaking negatively, or the Sedition Act made it a crime to publish false, scandalous, and malicious writing against the government or its officials. Adams had not promoted any of these acts, but was urged to sign them by his wife and his cabinet. He eventually agreed and signed these bills into law. This was really a really bad look, especially when you have Thomas Jefferson as your VP, who is all about, anti-government overreach on anything. Like, government needs to stay out of everything. And then your president is like jailing and fining and yeah. Well, and some people, I don't know if there's actually stories of this. I've heard, alleged accounts of like publications would come out criticizing the U.S. government, and like local governments would just hang them. Like, they would hang the journalists just right there, but like, you're not allowed to do that. It's, the Alien Sedition Act, and we're protected by the federal government on this. Like, there was some weird shit back then, and news travels slow back in 1800.
Yeah, but that was, like you said, one of his most egregious acts as president, and it was a big overreach, and it was kind of the thing that paved the way for the imperial executive that we now currently enjoy. Yes.
There's one thing the government to do when they get power
is try to get more. So we move on to the election of 1800. As many refer to it, the revolution of 1800. So we've got John Adams with Charles C. Pinckney. So apparently he beat out Thomas. And we've got, for the Democratic Republicans, Aaron Burr and Thomas Jefferson. So this one is quite an interesting one, because you'll notice that Burr seems to be on top of the ticket there.
So this is also both parties started figuring this out. Hey, if we overly saturate with too many candidates, it's going to be tough to win. So they started narrowing these tickets down a little bit more. And that's how Jefferson and the anti-federalists, or the Democratic Republicans, almost won the last time, because they only had 4 candidates. So they were only competing, between those 4, while the feds were competing with 8 or 9 people. So they finally started going, oh, hey, maybe if we don't like fill this fucking ticket with a whole bunch of down ballot names that nobody knows, we might have a little bit better chance to win this instead of spreading it out, because the Constitution has not been ratified to change that prior ruling yet. That does not happen. 12th Amendment, let's see, that's not till 1804. So number 1 becomes president, number 2 becomes vice president in this election still.
Boy, I forget, like, because we're coming up on the election pretty soon, if it's not this one, where we rectify that particular situation. Yes. But now for me personally, again, at this point, I'm going to be an old man, like big old long beard. But this will be the 4th time that I cast a ballot in support of John Adams. It's, despite all of his many flaws, it would be a holding my nose, and out of a sense of loyalty to General Washington, I would be not nearly as enthusiastically casting a ballot for John Adams.
Fair enough. With John Adams, like, horrible the Sedition Act, the XYZ that you mentioned, we didn't get into that story a whole lot, but that was his other kind of issue through his presidency that really kind of set him back a little bit and upset a lot of people. But apparently Aaron Burr's popularity at this time is just exploding. Like, he's got like almost like a cult following as we head into the 1800 election. Super strange. There's not a lot about the guy, but it is what it is. But let's see. So we talked about under these rules still hasn't changed. So you're limited to these 4 choices. I would have voted Jefferson for president, and probably Pinckney for VP is my second choice. I would not have voted Aaron Burr or John Adams. I would have John Adams, if he didn't fuck up so bad the prior time, I probably would have had him as my number 2, but I would go with Pinckney as a safer choice. It'd still get the war hero, still get, somebody who worked under Washington, so you still, got that representation there, but I definitely would have wanted Thomas Jefferson to lead the charge here.
Yeah, I think because of my foray into podcasting, in 1800s, I probably would have been very upset about John Adams. So I probably would have gone straight Democratic Republican ticket for Jefferson and Burr. But it's hard to say. It's hard to go against a clear-cut proven winner in John Adams. So I might have gone the same way I did in the previous one, but maybe flopped it. Jefferson for president, Adams for VP, maybe take a little bit of that power away, make Jefferson the president, make Adams the VP. I probably would have gone that way.
Gotcha.
So, and again, I'm pretty loyal Adams voter at this point, but this one time I'm holding my nose, and that must be indicative because his most loyal supporters are just kind of and so that when that happens, well, chicken, why don't you read the results?
Before that, I just to get you a sense. So this is 1800. We said this was like the revolution. The bitterness between the parties, like these guys were split. The Federalists drink and the Democratic Republicans, like they hated each other at this point. There was slander, personal attacks on both sides. They got fucking posters up, like smearing each other. The feds were actually spreading rumors that all Democratic Republicans are racial atheists who would ruin the country. And then they would actually support, and that was based because they supported the French Revolution. So it was like hot topics. You had a lot of culture issues because, if you hadn't moved over from, New England at that time, or not from New England, from Britain at that time, you probably came from like Scotland, Germany, France. Like you came from some of these other countries. I said that F word again there. Damn. And even George Washington had to, in 1798, as the buildup to this election was happening, he actually had to step in and actually say, like, like we shouldn't be changing our principles here. It'll lead to nothing but an unattempted to overturn the government of this country if you guys keep this shit up. Like he was really pissed about this. And then, of course, like I mentioned, the Alien Sedition Acts, that's hotly debated at the, at the times, but, whatever's going on with the Frenchies is causing a lot of anti-democratic values. The aristocracy in this country were divided. All of your rich people from the revolutionary era were starting to get divided at this point because, people that were all kumbaya 4 years ago are now starting to pick sides and shit on each other. And then, of course, Alexander Hamilton is not helping at this time. He's probably one of the ones leading the charge, causing some of this shit.
He was incredibly instrumental in this election in particular. So I'll let you get into that.
So there was what they called the quasi-war at the time. So Democratic Republicans felt that John Adams' foreign policy was way too nice to the crown, and feared that the new army called up for the quasi-war would oppress people and impose new taxes, pay for war, and attack the Alien Sedition Acts as violations of states' rights and the Constitution. So they called them high Federalists. Considered Adams too moderate and to have preferred the leadership of Hamilton instead. So he was trying to kind of sneak his way in. He saw the opportunity. It's like, oh, John Adams really fucked up in his 4 years. let's cut the head off the snake and start doing some propaganda here and start getting my name out there. I can slide into this spot. So Hamilton was trying to work both ends of this because he was still staunchly against the Democratic Republic party, but he was kind of throwing some stuff around there at that time. And then let's see, what was the other one? He was part of the Whiskey Rebellion too, wasn't he? I remember reading this the other day. I'm trying to find it.
I can't remember, but yeah, the Whiskey Rebellion, that's still fresh in the minds of a lot of Northeastern
That was a common
farmers.
man. Yeah, that was a lot of influence.
And Southern farmers as well. But yeah, it was whiskey distillers in the Northeast that the military actually was moved against. So yeah, I mean, me being Southern, like, you never know. That might have been something that would have swayed me, but I think I probably would have begrudgingly stayed loyal to Adams and all of this. But so, Chicken, what were the results of this particular election?
All right, you ready?
Ready.
Slightly more voters this time around, 67,282. So a little bit more.
Okay.
The winner by a pretty fucking significant amount, Thomas Jefferson with 61% of the vote. So I gave him the 73 that he needed for the Electoral College, and Aaron Burr being on that same ticket. This is really interesting how they did separate it. So they did play by the rules of the Constitution, but it wasn't actually ratified till 1804. So they did go by party. So Democratic Republicans win, Thomas Jefferson being the head of that party, and Aaron Burr being the vice president on that ticket. They get the 73 electoral votes. John Adams and Charles Coatworth Pinckney get 65 and 64, respectively, with John Jay being the second choice of VP with 1. So that's how it shook out. So your new president is Thomas Jefferson. New vice president is now Aaron Burr.
Whew. So, like somebody like me, I'm disappointed, but I'm not like dejected. Because okay, time to see how this Jefferson guy see if any of his fancy ideas can actually formulate into anything. And so, Chicken, Thomas Jefferson now has the reins, and he's given 4 years in power. And then he finds himself up against whom?
Well, now we're in 1804. Let's see here. What do we got? I'm checking to see if there's new states. Ohio is now added to the Union, officially ratified as a state. So we add a new state heading into this election. They officially been over a year. So they get 3 electoral votes. Let's see, does that change the number? So it's 176 members of the Electoral College now. So you need 89 to win in this election. All right, who do we got for candidates there, T?
All right, so starting off, the Democratic Republican Party ticket for President, Thomas Jefferson, the incumbent, and George Clinton back again for VP, making another go of it. So the February
just won't give up.
No, well, he wanted to. They just wouldn't let him. February 1804, Democratic Republican Congressional Nominating Caucus selected the ticket. Unlike the previous election, the nominating caucus did not meet in secret. Jefferson's renomination was never in any real doubt, with the real issue being seen as who the party would nominate to replace Vice President Aaron Burr, whose relationship with Jefferson had soured. Governor George Clinton of New York was chosen as Jefferson's running mate, continuing the party's tradition of nominating a ticket consisting of a Virginian and a New Yorker. Vice presidential candidates John Breckinridge from Kentucky, Governor George Clinton of New York, Postmaster General Gideon Granger from Connecticut, former Senator John Langdon from New Hampshire, Attorney General Levi Lincoln from Massachusetts, former Senator William McClay from Pennsylvania. Now, The ballot, this list of balloting, obviously presidential ballot, just Thomas Jefferson, and there's all your vice presidential ballots. Much more over there. Nobody's going up against TJ here on that side of it. So we go over to the Federalist Party drink. And this looks a little different. For President, Charles C. Pinckney. And for VP, Rufus King, former U.S. Minister to Great Britain. So, got some new names here, guys.
Yeah, so Pinckney's not very well known. He was from South Carolina. He was a Revolutionary War veteran, delegate of the Constitutional Convention. He was, of course, he was in the presidential election prior. Or no, that wasn't Charles. That was Thomas. So he runs in this one, and then again in 1808. Surprise! Spoiler alert. But obviously, he wasn't president. So
the Federalists did not hold a nominating caucus, but the Federalist congressional leaders informally agreed to nominate a ticket consisting of Charles Cotesworth Pinckney of South Carolina and former Senator Rufus King of New York. Pinckney's public service during and after the American Revolutionary War had won him national stature, and Federalist hopes that Pinckney would win some Southern votes away from Jefferson, who had dominated the Southern vote in the previous election. And there were two drinks inside of that.
Yes, there were. So this is the beginning of the end of the Federalist Party. Drink again. They never recover after the 1800 election. You never see them win the big ticket ever again. We'll later see other parties arise and come from the ashes and see some political movements again, as Philip referenced earlier, as things change across the country and our society adjusts and progresses forward. You start seeing new parties pop up. But yes, this is the end of the Federalist Party as you know it.
Now, if I may, as the person on this particular panel who was the loyal Federalist voter, the reason why they fell out at this point is precisely for one of the things you said. Now, me as somebody who had been voting for the Federalists this whole time, the fact that they nominated these folks in a back door, not open to the public. It was just shake hands, but in smoky cigar-filled rooms. That's not really open to the people. So I would not have been voting this ticket. And for the first time, because also the economy has been doing spectacular. There's been a couple of scuffles with the Barbary Pirates, but I can deal with that. I'm going to vote for Thomas Jefferson for re-election. And also George Clinton for vice president, because that pretty much rounds out any of that hope of, well, Pinckney served in the Revolutionary War. Well, so did George Clinton. So there you go, folks. I bet you never thought you'd hear the words of Phil KOE would vote for Clinton. I know. But I
got to clip that out.
That's out of context.
Yeah.
That's beautiful out of context. So, yes, I would have voted.
You're right. There's a lot of things that happened when Jefferson took over the Louisiana Purchase. One of the biggest fucking things, like you said, the economy's doing good. There's so much hope for America all of a sudden. Yeah, he's super, super popular for the Louisiana Purchase. Almost carried every state, including most of the Federalist strongholds in New England through this whole time period. This was like this. This election was like I said, this was like the end of the Federalist Party for me. Drink. Just when I announced the results, you'll understand why. Like it was pretty damning.
So who are you voting on?
Oh, Thomas Jefferson, of course.
And for VP?
George Clinton. So now this is 1804. So now the ticket has been ratified that you pick your president and VP, and that's your ticket. So no longer first place, second place. 1804 added is it the 12th Amendment?
See, that's the thing, and that's why I'm looking at this on I'm looking at this on Wikipedia, and it's got the vice presidential candidates listed here. But again, on the balloting,
I think they did like a primary to pick their VP. So I don't think he had a choice on George Clinton. I think he won. I think that's what that balloting is down there. I think that's
okay.
So I could be wrong. I don't know.
So that's what I was wondering did they do some form? So if they did a primary, now when was that? I guess this is actually fairly interesting to me. Like, when would they have actually held a primary to pick a vice presidential candidate?
Oh, let's find out here.
I thought that was just the general election.
So, Congressional Nominating Caucus selected the ticket in February 1804. Unlike the previous election, Nominating Caucus did not meet in secret. Jefferson's renomination was never in a real doubt. Blah, blah, blah. You mentioned that. Congressional Nominating Caucus. So, 12th Amendment. I was correct on that. In 1804, the passage of in ballot, George Clinton defeated John Breckinridge and was nominated as Jefferson's running mate. Yep. So that's how they did it.
Okay.
Nice.
So I guess I'm mostly curious, like, what was it about George Clinton this time around that really put him over the edge? Because I guess we haven't really seen a lot of
fifth fucking try, Tony. Okay,
exactly.
Give the guy a fucking break.
I was about to say, I think at this point it's like, well, that old codger, he's as old as me, and you know what? I'm gonna send him to the Capitol. Because at this point, like, all three of us got beards down to our bellies and a couple of marbles rolling around upstairs. We were like young men in the revolution.
Like, I remember
1770s.
Voted for George Clinton,
and like now, like, what year are we at now?
We're 1804.
Yeah, 1804. So yeah, we're a good ways past that. So we might not be fully old men, but yeah, our backs and knees ain't what they used to be at this point. So yeah, we're George Clinton is like, you know what, that old codger, I'm sending him to the Capitol. And you know what, that young kid Thomas Jefferson, I guess he made the economy all right. Like, what was Bill Clinton's advisor? It's the economy, stupid. It's
I remember that line.
So
James Carville. There we go.
Obviously, Phil was a loyal, drink Federalist, but if you were a Democratic Republican, was there anybody on this vice presidential ticket that you would have voted for over George Clinton? I'm saying no, just because he's the most familiar name there. I voted for him.
The only other one that people probably would have was Burr, but there was such a big fallout between Jefferson and Burr that, like, I don't know if that caused Burr's end of political career or what.
He's not even on this ticket here.
No.
Again, it's this George Clinton, John Breckinridge, Levi Lincoln, who. What did I say? He was Attorney General. John Langdon, and he's a senator. Gideon Granger, and William McClay. Now, none of those names have really popped up here. So, if you want to go for someone with tenure, someone who has some consistency in the political spectrum, obviously, it's
Alexander Hamilton. If I may, guys, the reason that he's not on the ticket is because Alexander Hamilton died July 12th, 1804. So Burr and Hamilton had their duel the summer before this election.
So there's one thing we did miss in the 1800 election. We need to go back with Burr. I completely fucking forgot about this because they technically tied and that bill had not been ratified. They actually had to go to the House of Representatives.
That cost him. Hamilton came out and said, "No, go with Burr, or don't go with Burr, go with Jefferson," and that was it.
Yep. So it was a tie in the Electoral College. So yes, that's ultimately what happened. And then Jefferson and Burr did not get along at all, even though they were same party, same affiliation. So I'm trying to read here to see what the fuck happened to him after. Because during the last year of his vice presidency, Burr engaged with a duel. He fatally shot Hamilton, his political rival, near where Hamilton's son Philip died 3 years prior. Although dueling was illegal, Burr was never tried, and all charges against him were eventually dropped. Nevertheless, Hamilton's death ended Burr's political career. So that was the end of it right there.
Yep. And so that's why Burr was not on the ticket, because he just murdered somebody to death.
Yes, a very, very
So we're
very
three-way.
popular person.
We're in a three-way agreement on this one that this is all Thomas Jefferson and George Clinton.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So that, yeah. And so, yeah, folks, that very interestingly, this is the first election where Tony G, Chicken, and Phil KOE would all be voting the same ticket. And that is,
That will never happen again.
ever.
I was waiting, Phil. We kind of talked about it before Tony came on. Phil, I was really waiting for you during the George Washington one. Since George Washington technically was an independent, I was waiting for Phil to go, fucking Tony G, oh fucking figure, vote for independent, go in third party, you son of a bitch.
No, I figured Tony was gonna still like write in like, Nader or Jorgensen or Perot or something. I don't know. Like, nope, still going third party. Or like, no, Tony goes total third party. I'm writing in King George. Don't care.
Exactly. I'm going on the Crown Party.
The Crown.
Going with the Crown Party.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
So what were the results of 1804?
Oh my God, the results were so so bad. This is why I say is the end
Obviously
of
the Federalist Party won.
Yeah, of course they did. So highest election to date. So the last one was 68,000. We jump up to 143,000 votes on here. A landslide. 72.8% of the votes going for Jefferson and George Clinton. So handily won with 162 of the electoral vote, and Pinckney got 14.
Wow.
So I don't know how this stacks up percentage wise against all other elections, but I believe this stands for quite some time, if not all of time, as the most one-sided presidential election ever.
It's certainly one of them. We've had a few that like were pretty one-sided wallopings, but yeah, it ended a political party in America.
Yes.
Okay, that's how bad that election went. So, but now I never thought I'd live to see the day. Tony, Chicken, Phil, all in agreement here. And this was the doorway to the next era of American history. And I think, Chicken, if I may.
Go ahead, Phil.
I think that is a perfect place to leave it for now. We got to leave a little mystery for all you beautiful people. We are going to get deeper into these How We Would Have Voted series. But folks, as I'm known to say around here, all that being said, thank you for joining us here on the Dog and Chicken Show for our very special election history edition. I am the devilishly handsome outlaw himself, your king of extreme, Phil KOE. You can find me at KOE Nation on YouTube and Twitch. You can also find all of us at Big Buckin' Empire on YouTube, Spotify, Facebook for all of the crazy cast of characters that you can find at Big Buckin' Empire. You can also find Tony, Chicken, Phil KOE at Revolutionary Wrestling Podcast on YouTube and Spotify. You know it's the right thing to do to follow all that beautiful content. But folks, thank you for being here. Thank you for joining us. Raise a glass to yourselves, and I hope to see every last one of you back here, happy, healthy, much the wiser, until we meet again here at this crazy adventure we call life, and we'll cover it all here at the Dog and Chicken Show. Gentlemen, take it away.
Fantastic. Thank you, Phil. Federalist War, British, French, drink, because I'm sure we missed a whole bunch of drinking words through that whole goddamn thing. So yes, cheers to you folks. Sorry we missed those words, but this was kind of fun, and I look forward to the next one because it's only 3 presidents, but Jesus, like that was 5 elections, and there's a lot of information. Now there's some lull moments that come up, but we're going to continue this series on kind of like we did with the last series. Go check it out. We started with Ruby Ridge, and then we jump on over and see what happened at Waco, and then we jumped on over and seen what happened as a result, and how crazy and fast shit can get with the Oklahoma City bombing. This is going to be a much longer one, of course. But this is really fascinating stuff. I'm learning a lot. Hopefully you guys are too. And hopefully you appreciate this content. And yeah, I don't know, warms my heart. I learned a lot of stuff in the last few days researching for this episode. And I didn't get to cite half of what I wanted to. God damn it.
No, like me, I'm doing a presidential birthday toast series. And like, I didn't even touch on what the presidents like to drink. Like,
I know, right?
Like, it turns out Washington would drink Madero wine, but he also produced whiskey at his farm. Jefferson, huge into wine. I did get into that. And I have to mention before we go, Adams, the undisputed heavyweight of presidential drinking. The man drank all day, and by every account that you can read of him, it did not alter his countenance in any way. He was the biggest heavyweight in terms of being able to hold his liquor. He would drink hard apple cider with breakfast, for God's sake, and it didn't seem to even do anything to him.
Didn't phase him.
Yeah.
There was a fun fact about George Washington. He was irrationally scared of being buried alive. Like, to the point where he actually said, I am just going, have me buried, and do not let my body be put into a vault unless than 3 days after I'm dead. He was deathly afraid. Now, back then, it was a very common well, not a super common thing, but it happened quite more than it does today, where people were assumed dead. They might get smallpox or some disease, and people were like, yeah, they wouldn't verify you're dead. They're just like, oh no. Like,
wasn't a lot of embalming going on?
Well, there was actually people that were being embalmed alive. They weren't dead yet, and they would do some embalming. That happened. They actually had to like dig up graves and move them to new locations, and they would find people clawing from the inside of their caskets several times. So this was a thing. It was a really big deal in the 17th and 18th century, or 18th, 19th century was like the height of that phobia. And George Washington had probably one of the biggest fears of it.
Well, also consider the fact that he was a general, and he probably saw some pretty bad atrocities along the way, and he probably did see some people that were just, as a dick move, legitly buried alive. And so, yeah, that would probably be something that would stick with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and let me see here. He died in 1799 at the age of 67. And I wish I had the source to cite here, but what he died of was probably pretty avoidable by today, not even today's medical standards. I mean, just fast forward like another 100 years.
Don't apply leeches.
Yeah, that's right. They
don't make your patient bleed out, and he would have survived.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, I remember that. That's crazy.
Yeah, it's insane to think.
We've come a long way, folks.
Fun fact about John Adams: they called him his rotundancy, because during so George Washington had just been elected president, but we didn't call him president. We didn't know what to call the position, and so him being kind of a pompous, like, elite, like, I want this to be his elegancy, and like everything was just so pompous with him. And while they argued this in the Senate for like 2 months of what to call the president, he wanted to be His Majesty President, and all this pageantry that came with the name. And eventually they were just like, it's the fucking president, all right? And they just president, done. We're not doing this. But
that was George Washington's insistence at one point. And it was actually one of the reasons John Adams found himself kicked out of cabinet meetings.
Yep.
I am the president and nothing more.
Yep.
And so, yeah, that was, because, George Washington saw the need for a civilian position, and not like, yes, you're the head of the military, but you are also the head of the people. And so, God bless the fact that we had somebody with that much restraint as the first one. Otherwise, God only knows where we'd be. But yes, yes,
it's
folks.
insane to think just if somebody else would have grasped political power, just how this country would have been shaped if it weren't for somebody with the actual levity to see with some foresight, not their own personal gain.
Yeah.
I mean,
I got one more fun fact.
Rocket.
If you're ready. Thomas Jefferson's recorded last words and then his real last words. So Thomas Jefferson's got so many quotes, and libertarian loving people really, really love embracing Thomas Jefferson quotes. And so on his deathbed said, "I have done for my country and all for mankind, all that I can do. And now I resign my soul without fear to my God, my daughter, to my country." And then he fell asleep, woke up the next morning, still alive, asked his doctor, "Is it the 4th yet?" And those were his actual last words.
Well,
but at the time they recorded the first version.
Just forget those other ones.
Ah, dang. I was about to say,
his doctor later wrote a book and said he actually woke up the next morning. He wasn't dead yet, and asked me if it was the 4th yet.
He asked the 1800s equivalent of what time is it? And then,
Yeah.
Well, folks, you learn something new every day. God bless. Thanks for being here. KOE Nation on YouTube and Twitch, Revolutionary Wrestling Podcast on YouTube and Spotify, and of course, Big Buckin' Empire on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch. You better be there because there's plenty more coming down the pike here, folks.
Uh-oh. What's up?
I'm sorry. I totally forgot. I'm sorry. Before we sign off, we got to give you guys an update. Let's see what's going on over at Tomfoolery.
Aw,
Ah, shit. Nope. Still sleeping.
Well, all right. Well, at least
wishing him well.
We still got our little gotcha in there. Hey, folks, but thank you for being here. God bless, and you'd better make it back here to Big Buckin' Empire. Gentlemen, take it away.
Tony?
Cheers, folks.
All right. As always, I don't have the outro pulled up. Now I do. All right. Appreciate it. Look forward. God, why am I coughing now?
Appreciate
live episode 94, Thursday night next week. You will jump in, have some drinks, get the kids get the kids in bed early, and join us live and have some drinks. It'll be a good time. We have a fucking boatload of awesome content between KOE Nation and Big Buckin' Empire. Stay tuned, folks. We got some fun stuff planned over the rest of the summer. And then, of course, as it cools off and you need to pick up that whiskey and sit inside this winter, we'll have some big plans for you then as well. So every Thursday, even episodes are live, odd episodes are recorded, but we're drinking along with you as if we're there with you. That's all I got. As always, appreciate you. Love you. Bye.
And see if it just smooths itself out.
Back, tell you what I'll do. If I ever get back, I promise to refabricate you. Raging rivers of gold. That's what the brochure advertised. And now we're lost. We gotta take it down. Let you down slow. It's hard to survive. El Dorado.